Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello everyone, welcome to Healing the Spirit. I'm so excited to be sharing this conversation with my friend Bevin. You can tell I'm kind of smiling from ear to ear because I was just recording another take of the intro where I read Bevin's bio, and there's something about Bevin and just her presence and the way she sees the world and walks through the world that is just so inspiring to me. It's really hard to describe because, you know how there are just some people that you need to experience rather than like talk about. And I feel like Bevin's one of those people. But if I have to put it into words, there's a certain radiance to how Bevin walks in the world. There's a certain levity and also, like a true, deep, enduring sense of loving the self and loving the world around them that a part of me feels like that's got to be very much hard won, you know, in this path that she's been on. So in this conversation, we talk about the imagination and how that's connected to our spirituality. We talked about self-trust and self-love, and especially being on a journey of self-love when parts of our identities or how we look like, the bodies that we're in, don't conform with the society's quote-unquote ideals in some shape or form. And we also talk about the world of the fairies, which is probably the first time that's come up in this podcast. Not that I am not a fairy person, but it just hasn't really come up. And so, I think this is the first. So I think you're going to really love this conversation. And I'm going to read you Bevin's bio. And this is written in first person. So imagine Bevin saying this through my voice. Hi, I'm Bevin. A childhood of bullying because of my weight kept me off the dance floor. When I found body liberation activism, the idea that all bodies are worthy of love no matter what, it changed my life. I've been reclaiming dance floors ever since. I teach aerobics through fatkiddanceparty.com and offer live advice at my blog, queerfatfemme.com, and my podcast, Bevin, a femme over 40 and her friends, which recently I, Jonathan, was on. Back to Bevin's voice. I am a Reiki master healer. I love tea, Dolly Parton, and the Muppets. That just makes me smile from ear to ear. So yeah, without further ado, this is my conversation with Bevin. I hope you enjoy. And I also encourage you to check out all of Bevin's offerings. All of the links will be in the show notes below. And I definitely encourage you to check out her Patreon as well as all the different ways to work with Bevin that's available. All right, here's my conversation with Bevin. Welcome, Bevin. Thank you so much for being here.
Jonathan, it is truly my pleasure to get to be here.
I am so excited. This is like part 2 of our conversation. You just had me on your podcast a few days ago, and I really, really love talking with you. I feel like you are both grounded and also there's this levity about you. Like you feel to me as someone who is so deeply connected to your spirit in like an embodied level. And so I'm just so grateful to have you. I'm grateful to know you. Thank you, Leah Garza, for bringing us together.
Thank you, Leah,
Um,
for so many good reasons, but thank you for those very sweet compliments. I feel very seen.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Um, so I like to begin my conversation by giving a little bit of space for my guests to talk a little bit more about who they feel, sense, or know themselves to be in this present moment. So, if I give that question to you, if I ask you who you feel Bevin is in this moment, what arises?
So what's arising for me right now is my Oriki. So an Oriki is a Nigerian tradition. I learned it from Lovey Ajayi Jones, who
Mm,
wrote a really great book called Professional Troublemaker, The Fear Fighter's Manual. And chapter one is all about the Oriki, but she also has a blog post about it. So if you just Google Lovey, Luvvie, and Oriki, you can get the tea about how to make one. But she challenges us. It's a statement to the universe about who you are. And
mm,
I think anyone with a strong Pisces placement, I have Pisces South Node, strong Pisces placement is going to be subject to being a chameleon and a people pleaser about who they are, right? And so an Ariki is such a beautiful way to state who you are to the universe and what you've decided. It took
mm,
me about a month to get mine where it is, and I've developed it over time. But like basically, this is my framework for who I am in this moment, but also in this life. But of course, knowing that I can evolve. So I'm a mother of Muppets, queen of the fairies, head cheerleader, a doctor of laws, a lifter of spirits, a warrior for self love, and a deliberate dancer. And I think like landing yourself daily as someone with strong Pisces placements or anybody, but like to really know yourself and decide this is my path in this life and these
mm,
are the gifts I've been given and here's who I am.
mhm,
I ideally I would say it every morning in my meditation, but more often I say it whenever I go like on my walk in the day. Like I find kind of a spot in the forest that feels like the oldest spirits, the oldest land spirits that want me to introduce myself to them.
mm,
And yeah, so I might say it in my head, but if I feel private enough, I'll say it out loud. I say it out loud on my land where I live. So
mm.
yeah, land spirits want you to introduce yourself to them, by the way.
Definitely, definitely. I love how quickly we go, straight into the middle of the magical curriculum here,
Of course.
because what I was going to reflect back to you, Bevin, was how the definition of magic that's currently resonating for me is the idea that we get to choose, right? That we have power and we get to choose and we have agency and we get to choose who we are. We get to choose who we want to be in this incarnation, and not in like an egotistical way, right? But I sense that from your answer too, there's this sense of remembering and acting from that place of remembering who you are, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, that was a lot of my work actually in the Akashic mentorship.
Mm,
Like the more layers I dug into, the more I realized like the vastness of who I am and who I represent and like how I am. There's
yeah,
some stuff like I kind of knew I was a fairy princess when I was a little girl. Like that's what I multiple years, that's what I wanted to be for Halloween.
yeah,
Uh, and like then when I got the opportunity to move up to the woods of Washington right before the quarantine, which is where I still live now. It was like a second childhood where I got to really flesh that out. But like I'm a
mm,
grown up now, so now I'm a fairy queen. And that to me like has as much to do with like the magical realm as it does like a sense of responsibility to
mm,
like show up as my best self. But like the more work I did in the Akasha, the more I recognize all these fairy realms that I have experienced because I just saw them coming through when I would open my Akashic records. And it's profound. Like I think intuitive development is part imagination and just believing yourself,
mhm,
and self-trust, right?
mm,
Which is believing yourself, right? So like um we really live in a society that pathologizes our imaginations and our wonder and all of that kind of stuff. So
mhm.
yeah, here we are.
Yeah, yeah.
In the magical.
I would love to hear a little bit more about your journey with that remembering process, because off air, you and I have talked a lot about the many different lives you've lived and the many different um, jobs and occupations, and also skills you've learned along the way. So, um, yeah, whatever's coming up for you in this moment in terms of your journey and how you got here, I would love to hear. And yeah, to have you share that with whoever's listening.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. So I grew up with a mom who I think knew she was gay,
Mhm.
but Anne was divorced from my dad, and she had been raised Catholic. So she kind of sheltered me from religion, which I'm actually really grateful to not have religious trauma in my trauma suitcase. But like in many ways, like I just kind of grew up not believing in God or anything like that because, well, first of all, I was just focused on my own survival. I was in like fight or flight mode most of my adulthood and late childhood, like from 8 years old and probably even before 8 years old. But I like feel like my overwork and like overachieving was like around like middle elementary school. And yeah, like it was very easy for me to just focus in the material versus in the spiritual realm. And then when I was 31, I started recovery in the Al Anon program, and that's for family and friends of alcoholics. And I thought I was fine because I didn't grow up around my alcoholic dad, but my mom had the experience of alcoholism in the family. And so, of course, she taught me all those survival mechanisms that like keep you safe, but then actually become barriers to vulnerability and intimacy later in life.
Right.
And so I recognized a need to recover. And in those rooms, they really give you a lot of permission to just believe in God. And you don't need a religion to like be the broker between you and God. And that to me, like once I just turned the channel on spirituality, it's like been, a 14-year unfoldment of like what's possible.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in my life, I've had so many coming out moments, and like coming out as spiritual was like a moment where I was like, oh, I guess I'm talking about this publicly now, like unabashed. And like, it's really, and a lot of people call me fearless, which is not true. I
Mm.
experience fear, I just do it anyway. And that is unabashed. Like, that's just like not allowing authority, right, to make me feel like I'm doing something wrong.
Mhm.
And there was a moment where like I came out to myself as psychic because I started to recognize just in hindsight all of the times my intuition had told me something ahead of time and was correct in the long run. I wasn't always acting in alignment with my intuition. I wish I had been, but I think sometimes some people only understand the language of pain, and I'm pointing to myself because I have been some people. And
Yeah.
I prefer for the lessons to be joyful because I believe that's our option. That's A Course in Miracles talks about that.
Mhm.
Like I think we can choose to learn through joy or pain. And like there's some pain in life that's inevitable, but suffering is the optional part.
Right.
And it's also optional to check in with your intuition, but that pause to just pause and see what my intuition is saying, like she surprises me a lot. And like, but I am just like I have humility enough at this point where I'm like, okay, let me just trust this. And I knew so like recognizing, okay, you knew some stuff, so probably you're psychic, right? And then now, last year I had a great reading with Robin Doxey, who's this amazing like seer, and she uses the Akashic records, but she's so much more than that.
Mm.
She's been on my podcast too, so you can folks who want to listen to it can go find that episode. But she told me in a reading, "You're as psychic as they come," and like it took me a lot of like self-image to be like to believe her. And I still really enjoy readings with other people because they can see things. I mean, we're always too close to the trees to see the forest, but
Totally.
trust, that self-trust that like, okay, if my intuition is saying this, like it's like free game from the universe, the Akashic records, like anyone can learn how to open their records. Leah Garza has an Instagram live class. You can go back. It's like end of May, early June 2022.
Mm.
And it's like there's an Instagram live and the prayers on her grid, and she'll teach you. It's free game
Yeah.
from the universe. Like they
Yeah.
want a daily practice, and the relationship and the depth of understanding myself as like this cosmic interweaving with like all these lifetimes and all these possible paths that are unfolding here on earth, but we don't actually know what's going to come through.
Mhm.
um it's so much,
Yeah.
but it gives me a lot more comfort and ease to focus in a spiritual direction versus focusing on the material world and like what's
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
What's coming up for you around that?
So much. I mean, I really appreciated the last phrase that you were talking about, which was cosmic interweaving. And that brings me back to the fairy world, actually. And I'm curious to hear you maybe talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, when did that dimension kind of appeal to you or like claim you, or how do you know when you're talking to a fairy, like the fairy 101 essentially.
Ooh, I've never been asked to give it a 101. Okay. I will say this. I don't know that I can give you a 101, but I can give you some basics that have come through to me.
Yeah.
I know for certain, without actually having specific memory of it, that when I was a very small child, I was talking to the fairies and kind of being almost parented by them in
Mm,
the absence of a good network of care.
yeah.
And and I know some basics about the fairy. They need dirt to connect to you. Frequently when I'm doing a Reiki healing, I'm a Reiki master healer. When I'm doing a Reiki healer on someone, this came through a lot during like the acute, we don't know what this is, COVID times.
Mm,
Um, that if someone like you just got to sleep with some dirt by your head. So like I don't even have a houseplant that has yet thrived in the spot by my on my nightstand because it just
mhm,
gets weird light. But I just sometimes have a pot of dirt there because like that's how they can connect to you. But being outside for any length of time, 5 minutes, like you can connect to the fairies. I also work with the
right.
gnomes too. Um, so they're there and they want to help. Um, I also believe in Fey lineages, meaning like
Mm,
physically, ancestrally. That's what I come from.
mm,
I come from Celtic Fey, but like
mhm,
there's Fey that exist in lots of different ancestral lineages from land spirits. And uh, there's a lot of play energy. And
mm.
not everyone vibes with the fairies. Not everyone does. Like I've heard some people who are like, "Oh, they're really bitey and mean," and I'm like, "Yeah, if you fuck with them wrong, like everybody. Like cats are amazing, but like don't pet a cat's belly unless you know what you're getting into, right? Like
Exactly. I mean,
so."
even like I'm thinking about, I grew up with my mom at some point had 12 Pomeranians, and like Pomeranians are very cute and they're just like this ball of joy. They love you, they want to be with you. But yeah, if you rub them the wrong way, they will bite you.
12 Pomeranians.
It's
Wow.
wild. What a loud household at some point that we had.
Yes, that is very loud. I feel like in today's world, if your mom had 12 Pomeranians, that would be an Instagram handle, 12 underscore
Right?
Pomeranians.
Exactly.
And then little
Yes.
Jonathan. That sounds joyful, but also very loud.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so more about the Fae and the fairies. So I think like if you vibe with the fairies, you've probably got Fae lineage.
Mm.
And it's really I spend enormous swaths of time in nature as a form of self-care, even when it's very cold outside. So unless the
Yeah.
weather's dangerous and or my body just really needs rest, which has sometimes been the truth. Sometimes I'll even just walk into the forest. The forest from my house is like the equivalent of 2 city blocks. And sometimes on a really low energy day, I might just walk into the forest a few steps and just sit down. But like it works. Like laying in nature is as beneficial to you as like going on some like epic hike,
Hmm.
like just being there is all they need. I said this on our last podcast together. I'll probably just keep talking about it because I can't stop. But spending some time in nature without your phone. So there's something about like whatever's coming through to your phone, that energetic thing that does interrupt a little bit of how Mother Nature connects to you. So I would suggest people spend time in their garden, leave the phone inside.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
5 minutes at a time is fine. But I
Hmm.
think I try to spend 2 hours in nature moving every day
Mm.
and
Mm.
moving or laying down, right? Depending on what's available to me. But I teach my aerobics classes whenever possible outside. I just think there's a lot of energy for you. And it's not just fairy energy, it's like also Mother Earth has
Yeah.
like our ancestors vibed with the earth like not that long ago in the realm of human existence. So like
Totally.
what we have, the civilization we have now, is very fresh. Like just think about how things are even in 2024 versus 2014. Like
Hmm.
all this change is a lot. Our bodies need grounding and earthing. Um,
Absolutely.
more things that the fairies can do. They can protect you from COVID. I've talked to
Mm.
them about this. So you can actually just ask them when you start having a gathering to, especially if you're doing outdoor stuff, just protect us from disease, protect us from whatever you want to fortify us against disease. I like using fortify because it doesn't confirm that there is a need to protect, if that makes sense.
Mm, mhm, mhm.
But they can help. And they can help with like when you're sick, just bringing a plant near your head.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they're here to help. Like all benevolent energies in the other realms are here to help.
Mhm.
Another thing that I learned in the fairy realms, just kind of like in vibing with my previous lives, is that fairies are born in flowers.
Mhm.
So, like a flower opens up, and that's where the babies are. That's
Right.
also where fairies sleep. So, and I'm always born. This is something that was revealed to me in the records. Like, listen, just trust yourself. But what was revealed to me, if you're already this far into the podcast and you think I'm crazy, keep going. I don't care. But
This is
I
incredible.
so
We're
I've
getting a
always
little mini course right here.
I've never been asked this question. It's good. So and I'm just here to help, right? Like that's my vibe in on Earth. Like I'm really just here to help. I know I can't fix this place, but I'm born in a pink rose every time, and I think it was really interesting when I got that revelation because we have wild roses on the land I live on, and they're pink. And the wild
Oh,
roses from the land I come from, like ancestrally, is Scotland and Ireland, and those are white. So I find it really fascinating that the forest I ended up living on has pink wild roses. Like that's all over the Olympic Peninsula.
right.
And so that's what I'm born in. So I have like a rose spray that my friend Jess Baker makes, and I just spritz it on myself before I go to bed just to like kind of remember the other worlds where it's not as hard. Like Earth is the hardest incarnation we can have.
Earth is so hard. Earth is so hard. And I think that's such a perfect segue, Bevin, to talking about the body. I
Mm.
mentioned to you right before we started recording that I really want to talk to you about the body and spirit because, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, um, to me, you're someone who deeply embodies that joyful spirit, but I can feel it like in your body. Even just sharing space with you, there's a certain kind of joie de vivre that I think you kind of exude. But I also have a sense, and maybe because I've taken a peek at your chart, there's something about it that's like heart one as well. Like I feel like you've kind of gone through a journey with it. So, yeah, talk to us about the body. I know you also mentioned your aerobics classes, which sounds so joyful. I'm like, I need to go to one of these very
Please
soon.
come
Yeah.
come as my guest anytime, Jonathan. My aerobics class is for anyone who has ever been called too much, felt too fat, or too awkward to dance. Like
Mm,
it's truly like a joyful reclamation of a dance floor, and my work product is joy.
mm.
Like I think have 100% success rate for people leaving my class smiling because I'm just here. I'm here to bring you joy and movement. And that's
Oh,
really what movement is for, is like for moving your emotions. And like,
yeah.
I also
Yeah.
like when people cry at my classes because, like,
Yeah.
you'll end up smiling, but like you'll maybe have cried on the way there because you needed it.
I mean, I'm kind of tearing up right now just hearing you talk about it. There's something about even, I think, the frequency that you're bringing to it and your intention that feels so pure and so, um, like, I get this feeling of like, where has this been all my life? Which I'm imagining a lot of people listening also feel like. Because for me, just for context, I know you are okay talking about your chart. We're both Virgo risings, so I feel like there's something there about being Earth risings people that has to do with like having an interest about the body, or like the land, right? Um, Incarnate existence. But to be honest with you, I feel like all my life I've grown up in purity culture. I've grown up in diet culture, like intense diet culture, right? And also the other day, I was posting this thread about how, body dysmorphia is not reserved for people in female bodies.
Mm-mm.
People who were born into male bodies feel it too. This is actually something that I've noticed people started talking about within like queer communities, but I think especially gay men struggle
Mhm.
a lot with their bodies. Big time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There's a lot of cultural capital in some gay communities around body type and size, and
yeah.
even the classifications, and I'm putting air quotes, in how many queer men identify themselves. Like bears are fat and tall and hairy, right? And then there's like
Mhm.
cubs who are littler, and like then there's wolves and twinks. I don't know if they're wolves is the thing. I know there's some sort of in between. Like it's a lot. And then there's like the gym queens, right? Like
Mm.
there's so much classification just based
Yeah.
on your body, which like I think if we're classifying it's to me, it's more about self-expression and personality than
Mm.
body, but like also there's a lot of commodification around bodies and attractiveness in gay culture because there's a lot
Right.
of sex and sexuality in gay culture. And
Right.
like for Venus and Scorpio men, I'm a Venus and Scorpio woman. Like I just like, for me, once I realized, oh, casual sex is not it for me, I just had, it was another coming out moment to me. Like all my friends enjoy casual sex and I didn't. And I was so frustrated with it. And then I'm like,
Mm.
why, right?
Yeah.
Because I need to, like, I can fall in love in a night, but I need like that strong emotional connection to feel hot for somebody. And
Mm.
but back to bodies. So I was raised to believe the lies about bodies that our society tells us, right? That like you need to be thin and young to be attractive. And that like, women, like I was raised in a household that was like very feminist in many ways. And
Mhm.
so like I think I like grew up with the major mistrust for men. So like even though except for gay men, right? Of course. But like I think there was definitely like there's something in my sexuality where I'm like at 5.5 on a Kinsey scale if we were to scale it. Like, there's a few excellent men that I get hot for, right? But
Mhm.
like my fear of men and distrust of men like has really kept me from really ever exploring that. And
Right.
that's fine, right? Like I don't feel like I'm really in deficit for that. But I think that's just part of it is like my sexuality, like it was like I understood that my value was based on men finding me attractive, but I
Mhm.
also wasn't interested in men attractive. So like in many ways, like I was a fat kid. Like I was fat. I remember my body being a problem by the age of 5. Like people
Right.
were telling me about my body.
Mm.
And like, I was a child of divorce. And so like I remember my dad's mom being like punishing me about my body and like calling it my mom's fault for not feeding me well. And I'm like, I look back in this and I'm like, traumatized baby. Like let her eat food. Like leave her alone,
Right.
but like early life weight restriction causes later in life metabolism issues, meaning like
Mm.
if you are having like early in life eating disorders or diets, like I was put on Weight Watchers at 8 years old, which I think is a form of child abuse. Um, but all of that like causes your later in life fat. So like diets fail, like 98% of diets fail. Like most industries like could not live with that kind of failure rate, but we have this society that props up the diet industry.
Right.
It's like probably got to be over 100 billion by now. It was 72 billion last time I looked it up.
It's
That's a
crazy.
lot of money to pathologize the type of body, and like people are making money off of you feeling bad.
Wow.
So like I am so like I felt terrible about my body. I was so dissociated, like very much like when I say I was dissociated, I was living in my head and never looking at myself in the mirror and like hiding myself in plain sight in baggy clothes. Like
Mm.
I realize now, like you're still fat, like you still look fat in a baggy clothes. You might as well look fabulous if you can. That's how I live now. But like when I was 22 years old, I fell into the right crowd. And your association is everything. And if you can find a friend group of people who like value you and your body for exactly who you are
Mhm.
and don't need you to conform to some bullshit made up beauty standard that is based
Yep.
in white supremacy, which I think we can all agree is trash.
Mhm.
Like, and it's just designed to make certain rich guys richer,
Yeah.
like
Right.
are these people who own all these diet companies? Rich
Right.
guys. Like, anyway, so, and Oprah. who I think is complicit in the weight loss. And it's like she
Yeah.
created the problem 20 years ago on her show, and now she's selling the solution with Weight Watchers. Gross. Like I like Oprah about 80% of what she does. This 20% is trash. Like imagine how
Yeah.
powerful Oprah could be if she really loved her body.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
anyway, I can rant about bodies for forever, but meeting the right group of people who like got me hooked into the fat liberation movement, which I've changed my personal um politics to body liberation because everyone is affected by anti-fat bias. Um,
Hmm.
but like meeting those liberated people was extraordinary for me. And my method for body self-acceptance, if I had known how long it was going to take, like that's how I say that about everything like that I've grown into. It's been worthwhile, but it's a slow change. It's like turning around a ship in the ocean. Like you can't just flip it. You got to like just slowly change the direction so you can change.
Totally. Yeah.
But what I found is like it took me about a full 7 years to really love my body fully. Like I started with like what was easy to love. And for me, like my cleavage was always really easy to love. So once Lane Bryant started having their plunge bras, like, and I could have good cleavage for the first time. That was life changing for me. So I would
Mm.
dress for the parts of my body that I felt confident in. And then eventually I just got used to like taking more risks and like, and my belly was the last thing that I could, that I came into alignment with
Mm.
and acceptance of. But now, like, I wear like, I teach aerobics, so I'm wearing these like clingy athletic pants, with my belly just carved out for the world to see. But I have a flabby belly. I don't care, like it's
Mhm.
this great body that I have, and I'm only ever going to get this one. Um, and I see the body now as like a vessel
Mm.
for my spirit. And
Mhm.
like in many ways, I love that I've had a fat experience because I know that my work that I've shared because of my fat experience has helped liberate so many other people. I wouldn't change a thing. Like I'm
Mm.
really grateful to that for this hard won body love that I've been able to translate into benefits for other people. Again, I'm just here to help.
Yeah.
But the thing that was really nuts to me is like when I was about 31, I had my first life coach around the same time as the Al Anon. And my life coach was trying to get me to talk to myself with love. And like I was talk to yourself like you're a small child. I couldn't do it. Like I just did not have that kind of self-talk. And then I realized like oh, it's not just body love that is this issue. This is like the way I think and it's the way I talk and it's
Yeah.
the compassion. I didn't even have this language, but it was the compassion I didn't yet have for myself because I just wasn't raised with
Mm.
and around compassionate people.
Yeah.
And so like this like self mind work and self image work is just an ongoing work. This is more than half my life now that I've spent working on this. But when you talked about body dysmorphia on Threads, I was like, well, Jonathan, you're already doing the self talk work and the belief work around like success and stuff like that. It's all the same stuff. It's just this what we're telling ourselves about the vessel we have in our
Mhm.
bodies and the things we do with our time
Yeah.
and the outcomes we have from the things we do with our time. Like it's just how we talk to ourselves. And when Mars and Neptune were conjunct like a week or two ago, I noticed in a weekly check-in I have in one of my communities, so many people were talking about body image issues that had come up for them.
Mhm.
So I decided to just film a pep talk for body image for my Patreon page, patreon.com/FKDP, if you're interested. But I have a series of pep talks, just, because I'm here as like your big sister, your aunt, like I'm just here to help.
Mhm.
And but I realized as I was filming that video, I was like, oh my God, I had a body image thing that happened that very morning that I hadn't remembered because I bottled the thought so fast and rearranged it to gratitude because
Right.
I was doing video editing for my aerobics and I realized I was critiquing my belly like outline in those
Mm.
videos. And then I was
Mhm.
like, oh, scratch, like replace with better thought, replace with gratitude for what my body can do and
Mm.
all of that kind of stuff. Cause like there is so much that your body is doing all the time. Your heart pumps, you breathe, you don't even have to think about it. Your body is a legit miracle.
Right.
And like 90% of your body is like other organisms working together. Like we have this hyper individualism from colonialism, but
Mhm.
actually we are a community.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, everything you're sharing, Bevin, is so profound, and I'm like letting it land in my field. And what's coming up for me right now is maybe just a little bit of a reflection about my own experience with my body, which is I feel like as someone who is able bodied, as someone who passes as quote unquote normal in society, and loves to wear black, like I actually genuinely love to wear black. I feel like it has to be my Saturn in Capricorn. I just usually walk around and I'm like, I look fine. There's no problem here, right? But yeah, like for context, that thread was inspired by finding someone's account who this person posted a lot of their own shirtless pictures, and then I was like, their body looks like mine, like it doesn't look like this Greek god person, and I was like, what? Like I could do that, like this person could do that, and like people were so nice in the comments, like people were just supportive of them, like whoever were following them or like their friends were just so sweet to them, and I was like, wow, because I could not. I mean, the thought of having an account like that for me just gives me so much anxiety, and there's a part of my brain that I think has always um, conceptualized or intellectualized that as like, oh, that's just not my path, which is probably true as well. But it's interesting to think about that, and I think something that you said just now really kind of put me on this train of thought of like, um, what a great advice to begin with a part of your body that you love. Because as you were speaking, I'm realizing one of the reasons why, for me, Zoom interactions are so much easier is because I love my face. Like, I think my face is cute. Like, I have no problems with my face. And I feel like on Zoom, we just present the face, but I didn't even connect the dots together that maybe when I'm hanging out with people in person, there's a little bit of judgment around the rest of my body, that I didn't even realize up until this moment. So it's pretty wild. So, yeah.
Self-awareness is one of the first steps to healing. So
Hmm.
I think that's wise. I
Yeah.
think another thing is just recognizing you don't have to conform to anything to be accepted. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking too about this person's Instagram account. Like that doesn't have to be your path. Like there's a lot,
Hmm.
it's been very fascinating as like a body liberation person to watch the world evolve over the last 20 something years. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of like naked fat girls on the internet, like I don't need to be a naked fat. I'm naked on the cover of my podcast, but like covered, right? So like you don't have to be naked on the internet like other people. Some people like
Mm.
Lizzo talks about how she is an exhibitionist. She enjoys being naked. Good for her. I'm grateful. Like that doesn't need to be my path. Like,
Yeah.
and also, you don't know that this person only gets positive comments, but they're wise enough to delete the hater comments, which if those come in, please have my permission to delete comments, not just you, Jonathan, but anyone out there. Because like it's
Absolutely.
your party. And yeah, there's a new setting too on Instagram where only followers can comment on your stuff, which I
Mm.
prefer because I don't want someone who doesn't even bother to click follow to have an opinion about anything I post, especially
Yeah.
body. But I like to say your body is nobody's business but your own. And
Hmm.
all bodies are worthy of love exactly as they are. There's nothing you need to do or change about your body in order for it to be worthy of love. That's just your own work around worthiness and authenticity.
Mm.
And that's, where this our worthiness and belonging are held hostage to our conformity and in
Yeah.
this society. So like the more like, and those are things like Dr. Brene Brown, a Scorpio, says like worthiness and belonging are never on the table. And like that's I think the place to live if you want to live a joyful life, free
Yeah.
from other people's opinions. But
Yes.
I
Yes.
would encourage you when you find yourself with other people and just clocking whether you're judging your body or not to
Mm.
replace those thoughts. It's again, this is all thought life work, but like replace the thoughts with compassionate thoughts because judgment
Yeah.
and compassion are both feedback loops. The
Hmm.
more I'm judging myself, usually the more I'm judging others. And the more I'm having compassion for others, the more I can have compassion for myself. And like
Right.
compassion is just it's self-compassion is the road to true liberation. And
Hmm.
like that is the easiest way to live with like joy and grace
Yeah.
is just with abundant compassion. And um And love is really why we're here, right? So like compassion is love, judgment is just holding love hostage.
Mm. Wow. I want to
Yeah.
let that land. Judgment is just, what did you say?
Holding love hostage.
Holding love hostage. Wow.
Because that's what people were doing to you when you were a little baby and they were judging you.
Yeah.
Like they were holding their love hostage
Hmm.
instead of just being delighted by you, which is what I think kids deserve. And so few of us actually get that privilege.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this piece around delight and wonder is really profound. I mean, the other day, I was noticing myself, meeting an online friend in person for the first time. And there was this thought, of like, oh my God, like my belly fat. Suddenly just randomly thinking about that. And then I noticed myself kind of taking a left turn there and being like, well, what has your body fat helped you with this past winter? I mean, I just had like some of the hardest moments probably in my life this past winter. And, thinking about like my body fat as this miraculous thing that has helped me through that period is kind of making me really emotional, actually, you know? And it's interesting, too, how to me, sometimes self judgment is protection against gratitude and wonder. Like, true gratitude and wonder is actually really vulnerable. Like, it's really scary to feel the sensation of like actually being grateful when someone does something nice or someone says something nice, or you notice a nice thought that you were telling yourself, right? Or like an experience in your life where you're like, wow, I was really lucky, and that can feel really vulnerable for certain types of personalities, certain psyche structures. And so I think sometimes our self judgment is also a defense mechanism against that feeling of like, oh, gratitude is not okay, you know?
Yeah. I want to give permission that gratitude is always okay because
Mhm.
gratitude is like one of the best thought interrupts that I've ever found is just to like pause and be grateful because you can't be frustrated and grateful at the same
Yeah.
time. You can't be like hating your body and grateful for it. Let's talk about fat. Our adipose tissue exists on our bodies. Like 90% of like weight loss stuff is like basically fighting genetics. But like if you think about like how necessary 300 years ago it was for your ancestors to have like body fat in
Mm.
order to survive harsh winters, like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's so it really is just such I mean, I don't think the people who came up with like slavery and like white supremacy like were thinking about what geniuses they were about like trapping people in their own minds, but like
Yeah.
how effective it has become
Mm.
at distracting people from the real problems in the world, like by
Right.
focusing on their body as a problem. Like
Hmm.
if you're at war with your body or yourself for anything, you are distracting yourself from the things that like could use your attention, you know?
Mm.
Like I mean, even like a lot of people learn their body image trash from their mothers, you know, because their mothers are not able to love them because they're judging their bodies, you know, like,
Yeah.
so it's like a very interesting thing where like ancestrally we have like excess body tissue that like is here to help us survive. And then we also just have excess food, thankfully, depending on where you live and whether or not you're experiencing genocide. But like excess food then creates more excess body fat, right? But like, listen, like part of my like riots, not diets sort of ethics in life is just to enjoy food, you know, and like as a
Mhm.
fat person enjoying food, I know that's a radical act,
Mhm.
but like I really incarnated on earth because I like the snacks. And
Mm.
so like I enjoy food. I enjoy occasional feasting with my friends because it's
Same.
fun,
Yeah.
right? Food is pleasure. We're in the middle of Venus and Taurus. Like let's have some pleasure in like
Yeah.
whatever ways we find it. And some people don't care about food. That's great. I hope they never cook for me. But my ex was such a trash cook. I would not let her cook for me. She didn't care. She didn't care if things tasted good. She appreciated my great food, so
Mhm.
that worked out. But like,
Mhm.
you know, I can't relate. You know, don't understand. But
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot. And also, did you know that six pack abs are a genetic abnormality? Like most
Mm,
people just don't have it in them to do
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so, in order, and like, I'm really loving, I've seen a few posts like this online where like certain people, like celebrities, and I've only seen men do this, but like
Mm.
celebrities will talk about like, hey, I got my body in this shape and here's the five people I have to thank for it. Imagine
Mm.
needing to hire a team of five people in order to get your body into like whatever shape you're trying to force it into. Like that
Right.
is freaking bananas, and that is out of reach or possibility for like one of us peasants, like it's
Totally.
it's bonkers. It's bonkers the standards they hold us to, and you can get free. Like I couldn't recommend like feeling free in your mind and body more, like
Yeah.
please regard your
Yeah.
body with love and grace. It deserves it.
Yeah. I want to return to this piece about distraction, Bevin, because again, in this conversation, you are facilitating like a bit of a light bulb moment for me here.
Cool.
I'm realizing too that for me, some of those negative thoughts about my body or how my body looks is actually distracting me from the joy of moving, which I
Yeah.
absolutely have. I mean, you and I both share this Mars and Capricorn situationship. And dude, if there's anything I fucking love, it's that I fucking love moving my body. Like, I love getting sweaty. I love using my life force energy in this really concerted way. I mean, earlier today, I was just at the gym and I was like, didn't really care about, trying to look good or anything, but I was literally just lifting weights and I was like, wow, this feels amazing. Like my body's working and it's like, wow, how amazing, And it's like, my body can do this. I love the experience and the sensation of doing this. And I think there's something about the thoughts, right, of it's kind of like self-defeating because then when we're focusing so much on like how the body looks, it takes away from the joy of actually just moving the body.
Yes, it does. And I think also trusting what brings you joy and what doesn't. Like
Mm,
I am I would call myself an exercise snob. Like I don't like everything. I don't like lifting weights. Like that's not fun
right,
for me.
right.
I don't like running. That's not fun for me. I am definitely a dawdler. My inner child wants to wander and like explore and not be in a rush. But I love
Totally.
dancing and I love dance
Mhm.
aerobics, and that is like
Mm,
totally my yum. And what's interesting is as a kid, I always thought that like exercise was meant to punish my body because it was a failure. But I realize now, oh, I was just a baby aerobics genius. And I'm meant to have strong opinions about movement because I'm meant to bring specific movement practice that channels through me for everybody. So, like,
yeah.
it's like everything I do when I choreograph for Fat Kid Dance Party, it's like goes through the lens of how can this be fun? And like that's
Yes.
really for me, like the unlock is like how can we make this fun? And
Hmm.
I enjoy like moving my body and what my body can do. And like I have to force myself to do it. You know what I mean? Like, because I think, well, here's something I read in Time magazine is that it's a great study that talked about how hard it is for people to get themselves to like the dance. I would say the dance floor, but like, to the exercise, like whatever movement practice you're doing.
Right.
And it's biological. Once again, our bodies think that we are in the 1700s. They think that we're hunter gatherer farmer people. And
Mm,
they think our bodies think that our life is toil, like physical toil to get food and sustenance and sometimes water, right? Like, there's still people in the world now who have to hike a long way to get water every day. So,
mhm.
like, if your body is necessary for just your survival, then exercise as recreation or as something we need to do for our self-care is not something our brain understands. And so
Right.
the reason why our brains are so characterized for rest to mean loafing and actual resting, that's why it's hard for us to get there. So like I always high five. One of the rules for Fat Kid Dance Party Aerobics is we high five for self-care. So if you get a drink of water, you get a high five. If you're feeling the moves, you get a high five. And everybody gets a high five just for showing up because
Hmm.
showing up truly is the hardest part of working out. So like
Totally.
we're just wired that way. Like I think we
Yeah.
don't let ourselves off the hook enough. Like it's becomes because of the pathology of colonialism, like or coloniality, we feel like we're on the hook and wrong for the way that we
Hmm.
just to show up, right? Instead of
Yeah.
just celebrating our wins and like
Mhm.
recognizing how our bodies are just wired for our survival. And it's just such a miracle.
Totally. 100%. I
Mm.
want to hear you talk more about your process teaching aerobics. What have you found along the way to be great ways to motivate people, to motivate yourself? What do you find the most fun about it? Anything you want to talk about it?
I think finding ways to motivate people to show up to aerobics is my my communication quandary always. Like, how do I tell people about these aerobics in a way that makes them want to come work out with me?
Mm,
I don't know,
mhm,
but I'm doing my best, and I feel like I work like 6 hours on communication for every 1 hour I get to teach. And I look
mm,
forward to a time where I just get to teach and some communications genius takes over that part. But
yeah.
in the meantime, I don't know. This is an invitation for everybody. Being on podcasts is like, I think, my best advertising and other people's therapists. Cause like I hear most often people heard about me from their therapist
Mm,
or from a podcast. So
mhm,
invite me on your podcast, please. Listenership. But let's see. In terms of the process of teaching, I'm really glad I just started because like over time it has evolved so incredibly.
mm,
Have a really cool workout video that's available on demand. Like I just, I'd always enjoyed like the little DVD sets I would buy from like a good aerobics class and like in before that VHS tapes
mhm,
and just do the same workout again and again and again. So I designed this as like my offering in that and I filmed it in April of 2018. It's 4 classes in one pack. So there's a 10-minute class, a 26-minute confidence building class, just because that's kind of the focus of what that class is. There's a 50 or more like an hour long full dance aerobics class,
mhm,
and then a 60-minute, and I will never teach this length of time chair class again. Like that
mhm,
was just me learning on the ground. Oh, a chair class doesn't need to be 60 minutes, 22, 25 minutes tops because it's like working one area of the body. It didn't compute. I just wanted it to be equitable to the 55-minute offering, which turned out to
mm,
be,
mm,
you only learn by doing. I think that's the best way. So
100%.
I'm glad I created it. I crowdfunded the production of it and it's still available online. Please go buy it if you would like to. I also take barters too. So it's like 44 bucks, no, 42 bucks if you buy it. Or if you want to barter or trade or pay what you can, like I'm totally always open to that. Just email
Mm,
me, fatkickdanceparty@gmail.com. So that's available. But what's interesting is like it's been so long and my class keeps evolving and like I keep adding more to the ritual and like moving things around. And so the way I teach class now, it's the same bones as it was when I started,
mm,
but it's just like I never thought I'd be a fat aerobics instructor. I was just like, aerobics, really? That's what's happening? Like when I had the idea, like I was like, really? But it just felt so right. Like I was taking aerobics classes in LA that were
mm,
supposed to be all levels, and they were not all levels. I was like, there's
mm.
so many people left out of this room because of how you're teaching this. Like,
Right.
so it was just like, and it was a lot of like my nightlife production experience, like just creating experiences for people to have a dance
Mhm,
floor who are not in normative bodies. And then also my drag experience, because I was a drag king for a long time. So, like,
mm.
in many ways, it's like a 55-minute drag show that I'm inviting people to participate in.
Yeah.
Um, and I even have like one series of choreography that's like an actual drag act that I just created and then teach it bit by bit. And it's really quite glorious. So,
Wow.
but yeah, that's the aerobics.
I love that. I love it so much. I feel like everybody should check it out because, yeah, you're a genius. Hmm.
Thank
Hmm.
you.
Um, I want to take a bit of a left turn, Bevin, if that's okay. I want to talk about desire. For some reason, I feel like desire is kind of coming up in this conversation, and it was like maybe the thing that we've been talking around or like talking above, but I kind of want to go a step deeper. And I know desire is something that we also explore during the Akashic mentorship. And I'm curious to hear your relationship, your definition, your experience with desire, and what your path in this life has taught you about desires.
Oh, good question. And it's such an apt topic too with Venus and Taurus and Mars and Aries,
Right?
right? Yeah. Um, desire is interesting because like in some ways I think I experience desire as callings from God.
Mm,
Like if something is in my consciousness that like wants to be explored, that's a desire, right? And it could be chemistry with another person. I think that's where we like That's our surface level desire, understanding. But like it could be like wanting, cooking and wanting to understand how these flavors come together. It could be like wanting, like endeavoring to like create a worldwide aerobic sensation and therefore just continuing to try, like there's a lot of desire that flows through me that just feels like a calling from the goddess. And so
Mm,
my top value for me is my relationship with God, and like that is an action,
mhm,
so like I want to show up to these callings, like uh yeah, so it's like I think it's recognizing that I had my first podcast episode with Leah Garza. There's a great moment where like I like to believe everything matters, like everything you do ends up like helping create who you become, even
mm,
if it's something that you try and quote fail, right? Like
yeah.
everything's either a lesson, but as long as you have the attempt, it's like a lesson or a stepping stone. And often the lessons are more valuable than the stepping stones because things
Mhm.
that come easily are not, I think, as valuable. And
Totally.
they don't help you become. I think
Mhm.
like God puts a desire in your heart that's like your worthy endeavor, like the labyrinth, right? So it's the Goblin Castle.
Yeah.
And then everyone is Sarah Connolly, or Jennifer Connolly, Sarah in the labyrinth, right? Like, and so we only know the next right step.
Mhm.
And like we all have that voice in our head that was installed before age 7. That's the Goblin King, the naysaying voice. So we have to
Yep.
tell that voice, you have no power over me.
Mhm.
And every step is a challenge to help build you into the kind of person who can have the Goblin Castle,
Mhm.
right? Because if you get the Goblin Castle too soon, like you might blow it up, right?
Yeah.
And you got to pay attention to who you take advice from. Like that worm did not want her to go to the Goblin Castle, So like she took advice from a fucking worm in a labyrinth. Like if she would have paused and listened to her intuition, she might have gone a more efficient way.
Mhm.
I am she. Early in my life. And like the bog of stench is like depression. And I've experienced a lot of time in the bog of stench. And I have to tell you, it's much easier to get out of it as soon as you sniff it to walk away. Right. And
Mhm.
so, but I think like our desires are worth our attention because
Yeah.
it's how the universe is like showing up for us.
Mhm.
And something Leah said once in an Instagram live that has landed in me is that our purpose, she's such an Aries. She giggles when she's about to burst our bubbles about something. And she's like, you want to know what they say about purpose? He, he, he. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was like basic. What I took away from it, what I always repeat to myself is like, our purpose is to calm our nervous system so we
Mm.
can listen for resonance. That's it. Like, we're just here
Whoa.
to chill out and listen for resonance because your
Yeah.
purpose can change. But like, I think there's central casting, right? Like all the guides who are like trying to help this be a love planet versus a war planet. Um, and like they're pinging us with resonance so that we'll take an action so that maybe
Yeah.
we combine with somebody else. I think there's nothing more sacred than creating with someone else. And like that's creating at the edge of the matrix, things that have never
Mhm.
existed before. There's
Mhm.
a lot of incentive for us to do the same things everyone's always been doing.
Yeah.
Less and less incentive now. Like I think that if the overlords would have realized just raise the minimum wage in 2009 and like we wouldn't be so unsettled. Like, but no, the overlords are greedy. So like, we're all working real hard so like 10 guys can be billionaires. Gross.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, it's like this idea that like our desire is the energy that the universe is using to drive us forward. And so
Mhm.
lean into that.
I
What are your
love that.
what are your
I
thoughts on
love that. I feel like what really caught my attention early on was when you said your relationship to God being action.
that?
This is really fascinating. Very Mars and Capricorn, but yeah, would you want to say more about that?
Well, when I was thinking through like what are my values and how do I want to organize my life, because I'd never really thought through like my values, right? But like
Mm.
I think my relationship with God is just first and foremost, like, and
Yeah.
I say relationship with because like I have to show up to that every day, like
Yeah.
meditation,
Right.
prayer,
Right.
rest, like
Hmm.
listening to my intuition, like if you are in a marriage relationship and like you're not showing up for it, like what's going to happen to that marriage, So
Mm.
that's yeah, that's my relationship with God. It's like very strong.
Yeah.
And um And I'm so grateful for it because like I really do believe in a benevolent higher power, not some like man in the sky, but like this life
Mhm.
force energy that flows through all of us where we're all one. Oh, the Leah thing. So either everything matters or nothing matters.
Mm.
I think the nothing matters energy is actually really helpful for pursuing desires because it's just let's just find out what happens,
Yeah.
just be curious about it because like most seedlings that pop up don't turn into plants,
Mm.
but I see the attempt and I'm like,
Mhm.
that's what God is. God's this life force energy that is like, we just want to try. We just want to see.
Mhm. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, this is so interesting because it's making me think about the relationship I've been contemplating for a while, at least. I'm going to speak from first person here in terms of like how desire in my body and in my system and in my path interact with my ego. Actually, because
Mhm.
ego is so like vilified in the spiritual world, but as a Mars and Capricorn, for me, like ego's a big thing. Like, and I think ego is really, really important. When I asked the records once, what they showed me was desire as being the seed, actually, right? The seed that moves moves things along, especially in the material plane. But then ego as being the car, right? It's like you are going to be changed once you get on that car and you go to the grocery store. Like the version of you that's at the grocery store is very different than the version of you who's just hanging out at home, right? In multiple different ways. And the ego as being this car, that kind of moves you along. And that's interesting to me because there's something about the relationship, there's something about the dance between desire and ego that does move us along and that does help us to explore um, what our spirit has always known deep inside. Like there's something about like the multiplicity earlier you were mentioning about kind of this cosmic interweaving, right, that we can access in the records. Um, and I always conceptualize it as like this experience of being, everything everywhere all at once, right? I don't know if you watched that movie, but it's kind of
Oh, I
like,
sure did.
yeah, it's like this sense of like, oh yeah, we have access to all of the lifetimes, we have access to all of the selves, right? But because we live in this body, in this human body, and we live in this particular dimension, there's a limit to what we are actually able to experience. And it's like, yes, I think faith is an amazing thing, right? Imagination is an amazing thing. And I think it has to kind of work in concert with moving the needle in real life, in mundane reality, right? And what's going to move the needle? Desire and ego, you know?
Yes. I've heard that the ego, so the ego is a great, much like emotions, the ego is a terrible master, but a great servant. And the
Yes.
ego is what keeps our spirit and our body.
Mm,
And at end of life, it's very painful to die because people's ego isn't settled with releasing to spirit.
mm,
And there is our ego is meant to be a thing that serves us and helps us move forward, right? And so I love that idea of like desire is the seed and the ego is the car, and it's
mhm.
just keeping us going, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's okay. I mean, like self-image is important, like, but it's also like the humility of like connecting to people's spirit first. There's a prayer I say every morning that I just started because I learned it in an agape spiritual center sermon in like April. No, man, in March. So it's been recent, but I pray that I speak from my highest self
Mm,
and connect to the highest self of all others seen and unseen today and all days.
mm,
And the idea is just like speaking from the higher self, not the ego, right? Like,
mhm,
but the ego also is like so it's so tender. It feels
mhm.
like it needs to defend and protect everything because like
Yeah.
we've had these trauma experiences and we want to save ourselves. And I think it's
Yeah.
it's understandable. I have so much compassion for like the ways in which like our traumatized baby selves like are
Yeah.
trying to run the show, but like actually like they're not good at running the show. They can't, like I've been to your party before. It sucks. Like we're gonna have a God party now and like we're gonna be in
Totally.
spirit. But
Totally.
we're gonna use you to get dressed and
Yeah.
like, enjoy, the experience of
Yeah.
showing up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how I'm conceptualizing it in the whole like ego is the car thing is that, you know, to maybe have the awareness to not make the mistake of confusing the vehicle for the destination. You know, like if you think that that's the destination, you are in a lot of trouble. But when you know that this is just a car, right? You're like, okay, let's
Yeah.
let's see what happens, let's see where it takes me, right? Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. I also
Hmm.
like the in recovery they say ego stands for edging God out, which I think is a good reminder,
Mm, mhm,
that
mhm,
we're really oh God, this my therapist says this all the time is that we're really the cruise director, not the captain of our lives.
mm.
So like we get to create the activities, but like really the destination is like being handled by a higher force that we don't have control over.
Totally, totally. Mm. I'm curious if there's anything else, Bevin, that you want to talk about that I haven't asked you or I haven't kind of put into the court here for us.
Well, I mean, speaking of desires, like I just want to encourage everybody out there, like you have a dream or desire on your heart that wants your attention.
Mm,
And the things that want to come through you want to come through you. So like there, I think, a lot of us say, oh, well, someone's already said this or like done this, but like not the way you could. Like you always have special sauce to offer. So I
yeah.
just want to encourage people like take some discomfort every day because discomfort is part of growing. Like your comfort zone is your failure zone. I hear that all the time in the things I listen to, and I think it's true. So think about the acorn turning into the oak tree. If you put an
Mm,
acorn in a flower pot, the oak tree is not going to grow and it's not going to get very big, right? But if you put an oak tree into the ground, like that's the root system is getting out of your comfort zone. So it's just basically
mm,
giving you more room to grow and more room to
mhm.
be yourself. If you're just willing to be awkward and explore new dirt, dirt's the awkward zone where you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I try to get like uncomfortable about 20 seconds every day at least, right? Just like make a hard ask. I've been doing this practice where I'm calling friends, like instead of
Mm,
scrolling more, just connecting
mhm.
more and like talking, like calling people I haven't talked to in 20 years. But like it actually, like my self image, this is where my self image work is right now. It's like my self image has been like, no, people don't want to hear from me. Like it's a hassle. I'm
Mhm.
like, no, actually, I'm a delight. And like, it's last year I did a psilocybin healing cohort where like my affirmation was, I am easy to love because
Mm,
like, some people out there find me very easy to love, and I love them for that. But I have not had that experience with myself. That's all of this self-image work. And so
yeah.
now I affirm that every day. And I actually have a ritual in the forest. I'll share with you that anyone who wants to adopt this practice, I encourage you. But I hug my inner child, like whichever inner child came to visit me in that forest walk. And I just say, I am easy to love.
Mm,
And then I take my arms and I crisscross them on top of mine. I was hugging first, like physically hugging my body. That's
mhm,
hugging my inner child. And then I crisscross my arms the other way. And then I imagine a metaphysical hug from one of my guides or all of my guides in a group hug, just remembering how loved I am by the universe.
mm,
So, like, loving every part of me and having compassion for every inner child I have, and knowing that every part of myself has been doing the best she could with what she had at the time, which is true for everyone. That's good compassion practice. But like, there's stuff that like I think we just gotta, this is ego work. Like, you just gotta believe that your shit matters, like either everything matters or nothing matters. Like pick your poison, like the way that's going to get you to move, but move, like get out of your comfort zone, try
mhm,
the thing, make the thing, and don't go so fast that you get into the like, because there's like the growth zone that's like there's a comfort zone, there's a growth zone, and then there's a like scary, too much, too fast zone. You just got to figure out the pace that works for you. For me, it's like a slow pace, 20 seconds every day is not a lot, but it's a lot by the end of the year, right? So like
yeah.
it's like me just trying to try more, like blogging more, even though there's a voice in my head that says no one reads blogs anymore, publishing my podcast, even though like numbers have been down, like whatever.
Mm,
Someone someday, like 3 years from now, is going to listen to all these podcast episodes and be so glad I was working hard at that in 2024, right? Like
yeah.
releasing the outcome and just welcoming the next step.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Bevin. You are so wise and you are such a radiant creature, truly.
Thanks, Jonathan. Can I offer people my one-on-ones?
Absolutely. I was going to ask you about all of your offerings. Please tell us all the different ways that people can work with you, people can find you, the name of your podcast as well. So, yeah.
Great. Okay. So first and foremost, I want to tell everyone out there, I offer one-on-one sessions and I can work with you in a variety of ways. First, I'm a Reiki master healer. I love using Reiki and helping people reduce stress, depression and anxiety and restore balance and kind of get things out of the way for healing. So if you're in a place where you think you want a Reiki session, hit me up. I'll give Jonathan the link for my one-on-one sessions, but you can just, you know, you can find them. Queerfatfemme.com is my blog, and that's a free resource. I've been writing it since 2008. So it's, I might have said some wacky stuff like 15 years ago, but I'm just allowing it to be there. Please come and find it. You can just Google queerfatfemme.com space and then like whatever topic you want to think about that maybe Bevin wrote about it. So that's available. That's free. Other one-on-one sessions I offer, which I think might be very valuable for your clientele is, or your audience is, doing business brainstorm sessions. I've been a Patreon funded artist for 6 years. It has been extraordinary. There are like, I can draw a direct line from the support that I've received through Patreon to the art that I'm creating today. And I'm really good at helping people like kind of create their Patreon world, the tiers and things like that, and just kind of exploring what that could look like for you, but also like other ways. Like I've been self-employed in some form or another since 2008. So I've had like quite a lot of experience, like figuring out a workflow, figuring out like what offerings to do. I do really good social media brainstorms, like trying to figure out like what content you can create to add value and inspire new people to come be your clients. Um, so I'm good at all of that kind of stuff. And I use the Reiki connection to kind of like one of my psychic gifts that is not great when you're dating, but it is great when you're offering things like this is I can see people's highest potential. So like I can see like what wants to come through for you and like what you could possibly be. And like you give me a couple of seeds and like I'll be able to really see some stuff and tell you what it is. I give you action plans. Very Mars and Capricorn, you know. So those one-on-one sessions are available. I love doing it. I really love helping people get their work in the world. I also have fatkiddanceparty.com, which is my aerobics class for anyone who feels left behind by mainstream fitness. And I have the workout videos I talked about earlier, but also my Patreon membership is access to all of my Zoom classes. And then there's a tier that has members only videos. So a nice video library that I rotate regularly with lots of different, like I have 12-minute grief stretch classes that are standing because like when I'm grieving, I can't clean my floor and do a yoga class. Like my executive functioning is kind of trash on a good day, you know, like so and I have, 55-minute dance classes. So lots of variety for people and chair aerobics and all sorts of things. What else do I offer? I think those are the two big ones is aerobics, Patreon. Oh, my podcast is called
Yeah.
Bevin, a femme over 40 and her friends podcast. But if you just look up Bevin on Spotify or Apple Podcast, you're going to find it. So
Amazing.
the low-key theme of my podcast is there are millions of ways to be a happy, successful adult. And there's solo episodes. There's like, I'm on 174. So
Yeah.
been creating.
You've got a really solid backlog there of content.
Thank you. I call it my body of work.
Your body of work, absolutely. I will have all of the links in the show notes below. Thank you, Bevin. Any last words before we part?
I adore you, Jonathan. I'm so grateful you're in the world. I'm really grateful that you're creating your music and using your voice in so many ways, including this podcast. I just find you incredibly healing and inspiring and an incredible cosmic vessel for the divine.
Oh, Bevin, I received that. Thank you so much. And I am so grateful for you and your existence and our connections. Thank you for being here.